Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday Inspiration Podcast. And I'm going solo today. My partner, Fernanda, is out on a training. So hopefully, we will be able to connect with her next week and bring you, of course, always an amazing podcast. And we always have amazing guests, or sometimes it's just what we're going to be giving you in value. But today I am going solo, but not really solo. I do have a guest, and I am so excited to have her. I know you all are going to have, we're going to open it up for questions. Just what we're going to talk about, I think really can impact a lot of people. I met Jane. My guest is Jane Oka Kaya Shin. And she's just an amazing human being. But a little bit about her background. It's her studies is in Eastern shamanic traditions, and she became a transformational life coach. She's also a certified yoga teacher. She does Tai Chi, a Vedic astrologer, and a medicine woman is what I like to call her. And she's been doing this for about 10 years now, about a decade, and really just helping people from all walks of life to help them to understand, what is their place, what is their role here in this place we call the universe, because it can get very overwhelming and people just feel like they're just living through life, but not living life. So she's amazing at doing that because she helps her clients live intentional lives. So excited to have her, and I want her to share the story with, how she got into this and a little bit of how we connected. But she has an extraordinary story, how she got into this. And it's just what she has done. And even I personally have worked with her has been transformational. So I'm excited to have her. So I'm going to bring Jane on and bring her on. Let's see. Hi, how are you?
Hey, so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Linda.
I'm so happy that you are here, and I wish I could just hug you. You're in another place right now, but we were just talking about before this that we were I'm wearing like a cami, like a tank top, and then you're like in a sweater.
Yeah.
What temperature is it over there? Like 80 here, and it's in the 40s where you are.
Yeah. And I'm still acclimating to the colder temperatures since I moved from Southern California. So, yeah.
And because that's where we met. I met you in Southern California. So can you tell a little bit of the audience, like, who you are, what you do, and I just a little bit about your background, like how you started and kind of like getting involved with plant medicines that have been just transformational, I know, for your life and for mine as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I think maybe you can relate to this. The medicines kind of found me and really were very pivotal in my own transformational process. But I think, like a lot of us who are conscientiously or consciously on the spiritual path, we stumble upon this part of our journey because we're suffering. We're going through a really difficult time and we're looking for answers. Like, this can't be what life is about, right? Yeah. So what really launched me into that direction of my journey, I'd say, was being really deeply in my addiction, which is a big part of my story and a big part of like the fertile ground upon which a lot of this has grown. So yeah, a lot of my addiction had stemmed from a deep disconnect to a sense of purpose, a sense of direction. And I think a big part is a sense of connection with life, a sense of connection with other people, specifically my family. There was a lot of disconnect in there. And actually at the beginning, I didn't really know where all this came from. It was just a feeling of, damn, can't be what life is about. Super depressed, heavy, deep in my addiction, specifically with cocaine, opiates, alcohol, and cannabis. And interesting thing is, when you are someone that is pretty heavy in your addictive behaviors, it could really be anything. It could really be anything. Like for me too, I would reach out for like work, any kind of sense of having something to do, so I wouldn't have to be alone with my thoughts and alone with the feelings that I was feeling so intensely. And so when I was in this place of deep desperation and not really having anything much to live for, that's really when I kind of started on this path in general. Medicines didn't really come to me in the form of like ayahuasca, Huachuma mushrooms, and Kambo, which, you know, I think we'll talk about a great deal, until much later. But this part of my journey really got me into philosophical study. Sorry, I didn't realize I didn't turn off my phone.
And I think a lot of people can relate. I mean, what you're saying right now, this was years ago, but even more so now, so many people can relate with you, you know,
Absolutely, yeah.
and you know what, so go on. It's just, I'm just intrigued by, you know, what you're sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do, at least for how it happened for me. I thought I knew where I was going in life. You know? I was actually training to be an officer in the United States Army, and I thought, and that's what I wanted to do when I was 14. Since I was 14, and since I was in high school, I had this vision, and that's really what I had committed my younger years, my teenage years, to that. And of course, at that time, during our teenage years, emotions are so intense, even now, but this is just like when we're starting to bloom into ourselves. So I was so committed, so determined. And when that started to deteriorate, when my idea of like what our government and what our country was about and all these things started to become deconstructed for me, and I was like, wow, this is not at all what I thought life was. And this is when I started to spiral into that depression, that darkness, because I'm like, I thought I knew exactly where I was going in life. And here it is, completely feeling like the rug was pulled out from underneath me, but it was, you know, like the life rug was pulled out from underneath me. So then I didn't know what to do with myself. And from there, started to actually dive into, like I said, philosophical study. And it led me into Eastern metaphysics. And this is when I started to really dive into Taoism and martial arts, specifically later on, but even in the beginning, being interested in alchemical studies. And that led me into like study of Buddhism and Zen. And it started to make sense. But at that time, I was very, very young in my study. And so my understanding was very conceptual and theoretical. And that's really where the plant medicines start to come into play. Because I feel like plant medicines, the reason why they're so powerful is because you experience what you have an experience, a visceral physical experience and internal experience, can't just limit it to the physical, of a lot of these thoughts and concepts we have about the universe, ideas we have about life. We experience this idea of oneness. And what I understand it to be is we get a glimpse of this superconscious state. We get a glimpse of universal consciousness. And for the state of society as we know it now, where there's a feeling of like hopelessness and desperation and such deep disconnect. I feel like this is such a powerful medicine to come into mass populace at this point. It's starting to really be accepted on a grander scale because of the power that it has to really transform a person's perspective about life. I mean, that is an entire paradigm shift. You think life is one way, and you have this opportunity to see life in an entirely different way. It's not just through your physical eyes. It's through a completely holistic experience. Your body, your emotions, you're experiencing in all different dimensions of your being. And that's why I feel like it can be so profound. But there are so many layers of that I'm sure we'll get into as well.
Absolutely. So which one was the first one that, you know, and I think when it comes to like plant medicines, there's so many people that are curious. I mean, there's a lot of people in LA and Hollywood, musicians, very successful people that actually partake in plant medicines. And I think we had this conversation. I was listening to a podcast, and Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup of the Soul, all those books, and he partakes in ayahuasca quite frequently. And I was like, what? I would never imagine that a person like him. So, but that's just kind of an example of things can look so perfect from the outside and when you see a person, but a lot of them are in just prisoners of their own mind. And for many of us, especially in these times right now, because we are so disconnected, and California now, well, thank God you're not there anymore. But my husband was just saying, yeah, they're thinking of locking down the states. Now they want everyone to wear a mask even outdoors. I'm like, you can't even breathe fresh air anymore. So it almost seems like, when is this going to end? So when we start looking at things from an outside perspective, it really does look hopeless. And you're like, what's the point of living? And I know a lot of people feel that way. And even with your own purpose in life as a practitioner, I was like, okay, I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to be helping people. But even at a time in my life, I felt like it just wasn't enough. So what was the first one that felt like you were being called, and how did you get involved with that?
At that point, I was actually working in addiction recovery as an instructor. So I was an instructor of Tai Chi as well as Eastern philosophy. I was actually at a holistic recovery center, and I didn't really at that time understand energetics as profoundly as I do now. I feel like I really understood them again theoretically and intellectually, but it was during that time I had this experience where I would constantly get sick. And what it was I was taking on everyone's energy, right? And not understanding how to protect myself. And it has so much more to do. It's actually more layered than that. But it was also my inner being letting me know like how unsatisfied I was with the situation. So there's so much going on here. I was actually getting sick constantly, so much so that in a, let's say, 3-month period, I swear I was sick like every other week. And this was obviously a telltale sign of something was amiss, because up until then, I would rarely get sick, like maybe every few years. I was a very strong constitution. My immune system is excellent. And then, I'm a yoga practitioner, I'm a martial artist, and all of a sudden, like getting sick constantly. And of course, it had something to do with working in this recovery center. And so trying to use the resources that I had up to that point, meditation and yogic practices, as well as martial arts, energy cultivation, and things like this. And it just wasn't working. And intuitively, I was just doing an internet search. And I think I put in immune system, some kind of like immune system reset as my Google search,
Yeah.
and I stumbled upon Kambo. And Kambo was actually the first medicine that I used conscientiously, because I should say it worked with conscientiously, because previous to that, I had played with mushrooms, right? A lot of us have that experience where we play with certain medicines, not really knowing their capacity, not really coming to them with intention. So Kambo is actually the first medicine that I stumbled upon. And it's really interesting because there is a clip. I think it was like ABC News had done a segment on the practitioner that I would study with and apprentice with. And I saw myself in that. I'm like, oh my God, I look 10 years older than I do now. I was so disheveled at that time.
Wow.
I was like, wow, I look seriously 10 years younger now than I did back then, because I was so heavily laden with this deep, dark energy, right? I was carrying a lot of energetic burden. So when I first started working with Kambo, I was absolutely amazed It is a non-psychoactive, and it
Can
works
you
on the
explain
level.
what that is? Can you explain what combo is? Because there's some people who
Absolutely.
know.
Sure. So Kambo is the venom of a poisonous tree frog, and it's found in the South American Amazon. And so the actual medicine of Kambo is the poison that's secreted and is on the surface level of the skin of these frogs. And so it's interesting, like the shamans that cultivate this medicine would actually sing to the frogs and have a different relationship with them altogether. It's very different from this kind of Western conception of connecting to nature, which is, I think, changing a great deal. So when they cultivate this medicine, they would scrape the venom off the frogs. And of course, they would create no harm to them. So much so that they have these like pictures of these frogs were like suspended in the air, and they're just like, "Oh, cool, I'm chilling," you know, because they're just their relationship to the tribes that use this medicine and the shamans it's just so symbiotic, and it's very friendly. So they scrape the venom off and they put them on these bamboo pallets or wooden pallets, excuse me, and they allow them to dry, not in the sun because that can tamper with the medicine. And from them, they're generally sealed in corn husks, and this allows them to be preserved. And they basically go into like a dormant state, the medicine, the venom does. And again, it's a non-psychoactive. I just want to say it's very different from another frog medicine, which is known as 5-MeO toad. I'm sure you know about this one. This is a psychoactive. It's very different. This is similar to ayahuasca in its effects, as it's, it works with, psychoactive medicine versus Kambo, which is a non-psychoactive.
I wasn't familiar. I'm not familiar with the other one. Just combo. So
okay, yeah, that's actually I say that as a caveat because I notice that a lot of people kind of confuse the two, or they can be confused. So Kambo is not 5-MeO toad, which is a psychoactive. So Kambo, the medicine of Kambo. When we say Kambo, we're talking about the venom. And the way that it is administered is we refer to them as gates, but it's just a small opening on the surface of the skin that's created by burns. And the medicine is reconstituted with just some water. Back in the day, they would use spit, but we use water. and then we create small portions of the medicine that would fit perfectly onto the small circular openings created by the burns. And that is how the energetics or the frog medicine is connected with the human energetic system. And so it enters the system through the openings. And, I held space for Linda for you in, I think, a few Kambo ceremonies. And the effect is generally pretty immediate. I mean, we are talking about working with venom here, right? So it is a pretty immediate experience of the venom. And generally, should I go into like all the procedural stuff? Like we'll do like tests, make sure that you're not allergic and things like that. So of course there are precautions that are taken. We do a lot of preliminary qualifications of the clients. It's not just like, hey, come on in, we'll slap some venom on you, right?
And also purpose and an intention, right? Because that's why most people, want to experience this because there's a purpose and an intention of the medicine.
Absolutely. And I think that is a huge distinction. When we have ceremonial work, that is specifically done with intention. And that goes for when we work with any kind of medicine, even like psilocybin. It's a totally different experience when a person goes in with intention, with a guide, with a ceremonial mindset versus I'm playing this weekend, which is also, you do get the effects in that scenario, but it's a very different experience altogether. So with Kambo, being that it is a non-psychoactive, the energetics are very interesting. The way that I kind of see it working is, so the tribes have this term called panema, which is the dark cloud of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going into a discussion of human energetics and just energy in general. When we are in a state, like I was explaining, when we're constantly getting sick,
Mm-hmm.
a person gets sick because they are an energetic match to getting sick. Like you can't get, for instance, COVID-19 unless you are an energetic match to COVID-19. Like that's what people don't understand.
Yes.
But
It's
that's
the
maybe a
fear.
discussion for later. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
discussion for later on. But and also how fear is what's like the worst deterrent for your immune system and all of this. So like it's so backwards the way that we're going to like try to help people by making them super paranoid and terrified. Like, oh yeah, that's really going to help their immune system, right? But another discussion for later on, perhaps. Anyway, so going back to this discussion about Kambo, where you have to be an energetic match to being sick, right? So usually when we are kind of in this dark energy cloud or panema, it's like we usually get a run of bad luck all over the place. So we're getting sick and this guy cuts me off and I get pissed off. I don't have like the best relationships with my spouse or my children right now. Oh man, this stuff went on at work and all of these bad things seem to be happening to me, right? So this is what can be related to panema, this dark cloud of energy. It's like, wow, why does it just keep raining down on me? So because of the way the law of attraction works, generally when we're in this state, what do? We create more of the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in a negative state, I'm in that negative frame of mind. What do? I'm going to create more of the same. I'm going to create scenarios that make me feel that way because not knowing, perhaps if you don't know or unfamiliar with the law of attraction, like you're the magnet, you're creating that, you're attracting it into your own life. So if you're in this kind of like snowball effect, Kambo is like the perfect medicine to help relieve that, because what it causes or what it helps to do is create a break in that cycle that you're generally in. So the panema is lifted and it allows a space, a break. And this is often why people after a ceremony with Kambo, they come out like, oh, very clear-headed. Like, I actually don't have many thoughts right now. Excellent. Like that's what we're going for, because before that, the panema is like, I'm in this cycle of negative thoughts, negative patterns that are creating more of the same. So Kambo creates that break.
So is it the vibration? I mean, what is it about the Kambo that, I mean, how does that work physiologically in the body? Because, I mean, I know like, you know, when I've worked with you, yes, you know, people sometimes ask me, like, I come home and they're like, what happened to your arm? Like I have like 5 burn spots. And, you know, that's kind of when people having conversations are like, what's that? What happened? Is like that a new tattoo or something? I'm like, no, I don't have any tattoos, you know? But when you're applying the medicine in there and it goes inside, because really it's not on you for that long of a period. We're usually done within
minutes,
5 to
right?
7 minutes, right? If that, I don't even know. I mean, I just know that really it's like it's a poison, and the skin is the largest organ in the body. And it's just like, bam, rapid. You start to feel it and you're like, you know, you're feeling flushed, you're feeling like, oh my gosh, like I want to throw up, like I can't breathe sometimes, just different funky sensations are happening. So what exactly is happening in the body that kind of short circuits, like you were saying, that those subconscious patterns that we're running in our brain, and that's what the I think it's called the panema. I think that's what it's called. Almost like a bad luck. And it's like we're circulating and keep running the same circuits of bad luck. And like you were saying, it's like, oh, it's going to be one of those days. My alarm didn't turn on. You know, oh my gosh, I'm out of coffee. You get in the car and you're already just boom, you're a magnet for negative crap happening to you that day, because you get stuck in that cycle. So how is it that Kambo breaks that cycle?
Well, on the physiological level, so we're working with venom, right? So anytime we're in contact with something that intense, which is, of course, it's interesting. I forgot to mention that the frogs, what's so interesting about these specific frogs, because they have this venom that they secrete, they are completely protected from predators.
Yep.
And because of this, when the shamans come to collect them, they don't budge. Why? Because they're not afraid of anything.
Yeah.
So imagine you are in contact with an energy that has no fear. Doesn't have fear. It's not on edge. Like a predator is going to come and get them. So I forgot to mention, it's such a huge point. You are coming into connection with an animal that doesn't have fear.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's coming into your energetic vibration. Like you are completely connected with it. But on the physiological level, when the human system is connected with a venom, something so highly intense, your entire body goes into high alert. It goes into survival mode on like the highest level. All of the body's potential for like potential survival mechanisms come into high alert. And this is how the immune system becomes like completely supercharged. It's like everything comes to protect you. Everything becomes like secreted out of your body. Everything comes enhanced. It's almost like the Hulk comes out. It's like, I gotta protect everything. Everything's like going to shit, and I gotta do something about it. And that part of you comes out. It's like revived physiologically, and that's because it's in the state of I need to survive. There's something toxic, but it's so interesting because I almost feel like toxicology in general, like for instance, like snake venom or frog venom, in this case, is so misunderstood in our culture because we have this very polarized way of thinking, black and white, instead of understanding that everything exists in a divine dichotomy, which is that, as an example, like toxicity, we think of it as like, oh, it's poison, it's death, but it's also life-giving, you see.
Yeah.
It's also life-giving. And just as a side note, it's very interesting that much of toxicology research in the United States is actually illegal, specifically for things like cancer and AIDS research.
Wow. Interesting.
Really interesting. Maybe because it's a cure for things. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe I do.
But the difference too, like, and I just that totally like made sense now, because I had I think I had heard of you because I had participated in ayahuasca in Peru. I've done that. And someone that I knew had mentioned your name, and they're like, okay, when you're done with these, with your ceremonies, and I wouldn't recommend, and then I want you to chat about the Kambo, but just like with ayahuasca, it's medicine. It's something you don't go play with that. Because I always tell people, you will get your ass handed to you. You have to respect it. And it does not taste good, and it brings out some of like the worst things, but to surface. But it's like, why hold on to all that if that's just what's holding you back in creating those limiting beliefs that I can't do this, and I'm stuck, and I'm a victim, and I'm going to get sick. If we're stuck in that, we can't create, which is such a different vibrational energy of love, joy, excitement, happiness, which is up here. And that just so made sense when you were just talking about with Kambo. It's almost like, bam, instantly. It's just like something has just been lifted, but you also feel freaking pretty powerful. And it's just like, come on, let's go to the gym after days, because you don't want to do them. You want to do them back to back. Because can you kind of share about that too, of like how you like to administer the Kambo? And then I want to talk about how different that is with working with, with ayahuasca, which we both have worked with as well, and other medicines. But can you share, like, what is your recommendation? Like, how many ceremonies should a person do? And then there's also even preparing it beforehand. Prepare your body mentally, but also physically. You don't want to go out and have like, all these hamburgers like the day before, all this sugar and all these sweets, because you really want the medicine to work and bam, get the maximum capacity and what you can get from it, you know?
Absolutely. If I can just add something before going
Mhm.
into that, mainly for having worked with these medicines for some time and holding space for quite a number of people, the way that I actually facilitate spaces and I work with clients now is very different than it used to be.
Mhm.
And it has a lot to do with what you're saying in terms of preparation. What I was noticing in my work with people is that there was a lot of information missing.
Mhm.
Even with my guidance for preparations, which I'll go to here in a minute, it's more about that they don't, a lot of people, and specifically, no, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people don't realize how much they don't know about energy and how they don't know about the universe. And so what I offer now is very different than back then, because when I was receiving clients, I was learning from them what I really needed to give them. Does that make sense? I'm sure
Mhm.
you learned this from
Absolutely.
your clients as well. Like,
Mhm.
this is what they really need and this is what I can provide. But so as an example, people would come and they would have this amazing experience and they would go right back into their behavioral patterns. And they wouldn't realize that you just have been gifted this amazing break.
Yeah.
And then they go back and like, oh, okay, well, tonight I'm going to go hang out with my family and I'll have a couple drinks. Like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not saying that drinking is something terrible that no one should do, but it's like you've just been given so the gift of clarity and your body is super cleansed. And you know what? Alcohol is a poison, straight up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
no, we can't get
So
around
true.
that. It's a poison,
Yeah.
straight up. And yes, we can use it in small amounts for, different reasons, to let loose and hang out with our buddies and have a good time. Great. And I think that people can use that in a very healthy way as well. But I just noticed so many times my clients would just go straight back into their old behavioral patterns, not utilizing this amazing space that they've just been given in their mind, but also just in their energy. There are
Mhm.
certain behavioral patterns that have, it's like they all have vibrations. They all have vibrations. And that which you connect to right away is going to determine, because you're basically like clear after a combo ceremony, you're starting to dictate like where you're going on from then. Right.
Yes.
So if you're going right back into those old behavioral patterns that you were trying to stop, thinking it's just fine, you know, then, sometime down the line, you're back right where you started. So this is what got me to realize that I had to do something different for them.
Mhm.
And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So going back to your question, which was, can you remind me?
About how many sessions,
Ah,
would you recommend? And there's also preparation, like, a little bit of like, I know you gave us like a handout and to read through it to prepare so that we could get the maximum benefit. It's like going to a
yeah.
game and like, hey, we're going to a concert or something. You just want to get the ultimate experience. And that's
Mm,
really what you want to do is you're not playing with the medicine. It's about going to get the ultimate experience to help you become a better version of you. In essence, that's going to have a ripple effect in the entire world.
absolutely. So some of the preparatory guidelines that I give is to eat a specific way, because there
Mhm.
are certain things when you're going to a medicine like Kambo. Kambo is a cleanser. For instance, frogs as a spirit are connected to rain, are connected to cleansing.
Mhm.
So it has a lot to do with detoxifying your system physically as well as mentally and emotionally. So when we're working with the medicine, we want to specifically stay away from things that are retainers, things that are going to assist in holding on. So salt, for
Mhm.
instance, salt is a
Mhm.
retainer, or heavy meats that are going to make your system laden, like it creates sluggishness in the digestive system.
Mhm.
Specific, I know I gave specific guidelines about certain kinds of meats that are
Mhm.
a little bit more heavy on the human energetics, on the human physiological system, for instance, like pork or red meat
Mhm.
versus like fish is a lot easier. as well as small amounts of chicken and things like this. And also caffeine. Mainly, caffeine is a different one specifically because it's not so much because it's a retainer, but because it creates a lot of erratic energy in the system.
It's a stimulant for some people.
Absolutely. It creates a lot of instability and a lot of nerves. And you want to be as clear as possible when you're working with the medicine. So I generally recommend at least 3 days, because that is at least for someone who is habitually using coffee in their regimen. 3 days might be like a stretch for them. So I'm going to say at least 3 days. If you can do it 5 to 7, that'll be really nice. You can supplement instead with green tea. And another thing too, because it is a cleanser, there is generally, I'd say about 85, if I were to give it a number, 90% of people will have a visceral purging, generally through vomiting.
Yes.
But I also see like cold sweats, because that's another form of purging. You're evacuating your system, detoxing through the skin. A lot of people, especially if they have a lot of toxicity in their system, they'll get really itchy and their skin will become inflamed. So just a lot of different ways to detox. Yeah, some people will just like cough or sneeze a lot. That I see a little bit more rarely, but mostly purging through vomiting, but also through elimination through the bowels. So there's just so many ways of purging that's going to come. So you want to have a very free and clear system as much as possible to prepare for that, because it can be very uncomfortable. For instance, if you have a lot of acid in your system, just imagine vomiting,
Yeah.
It's already nasty. Like you remember a combo. Yeah. A combo purge through vomit is not like no other vomit you've ever experienced. You're like, that taste I have never had before.
It's different than ayahuasca. I mean,
absolutely.
Having both, experienced both, it's like, it is different. So you'll have people prepare for that. And then what do you recommend as far as like sessions? Like, I know that I did back to back with you. I think I did 2 at least, or I know at least 2 with you. Because sometimes people do like 3 in a row as well. But so what do you?
So the reasoning for that is akin to when you go into a cleanse with, let's say, juice fasting, or let's say a detox cleanse with just water or any kind of combination of that. So you get a great deal out of 1 day. That's a great, let's say you did 1 day of juicing or even 1 day of water fast. That is very different from 3 days of water fasting or juice fasting or cleansing. And then very different again from 5 days, right? You have such an exponential benefit of cleansing from, let's say, a 5-day period than a 1-day period. So that would be very similar to how it works with the combo treatments. When you have a 1-day combo experience, amazing, absolutely cleansing and purifying. But when you work with combo for 2 days, the medicine accumulates in your system. And so your cleansing is enhanced that much more, because it's like you're stacking on medicine, mainly because the medicine will stay in your system between 1 week and a month, depending on how you follow up with your ceremonial work. So if you go right back into eating like McDonald's hamburgers and cheeseburgers the next day, like, well, probably may even last like 5 days, 3 days. I don't know. Depends on how you carry on. But you can actually extend it to last a month if you are very careful about how you follow up. And the tribes also say that for the next week, some people even say for the period of a month or any length of time, that you're actually offering your routine or the way you eat as a sacrifice to the medicine, as a thank you, as a gratitude.
Got you.
Yeah. And interestingly, like that gratitude is just completely reflected on yourself. Like you're going to be gifted even that much more.
Yeah, that makes sense. So really it's preparing for it. So kind of going through Kambo is, one, he said the medicines just find you. I really believe that it's not something that you play with. The medicines find you. There's a preparation phase, and then pretty much in all the different medicines, there's a preparation phase of a cleansing, eliminating caffeine, eliminating, like you said, even like some of the red meats, and just having a real bland diet, removing the salt, and then even having sometimes like even not even sometimes a specific or maybe not a specific intention of I just want the medicine to work in me to remove whatever crap needs to be removed from my mental aspect, because we know that a lot of the emotion stuff is what impacts our body. I mean, there's a connection. People cannot refute that. The science cannot refute that. That most people, we know everything from breast cancer to colon cancer to liver cancer. They're all connections with some sort of emotion, from stress, from unworthiness, from anger to not trusting life. Those are just some of the examples. But going in there and just having an intention, and I know that I journaled before and kind of wrote out like, this is, a challenge that I'm going through in my life. This is what I want to clean out. Went through the process. And then I know you also encouraged, like, I mean, after this short little intense, like I'm vomiting, I'm throwing up, I'm done. And I experienced everything you said about, I was sweating, and I was throwing up, and I felt like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. And somehow, I don't know how you work it, but you knew when it was time to take it off of the person. And you just feel like you ran like a marathon. You're like, oh, you're just exhausted afterwards. And we went and slept, and then you just 20 minutes or an hour. But the ones that slept for maybe 15 or 20 minutes felt like they always ask, how long was I sleeping for? They felt like were in a deep sleep for like 8 hours, and then they woke up. And then you just kind of like, I would journal after that, and just kind of like how you're feeling. You feel like, oh, man, I did that. It takes some courage to do that,
Yeah, absolutely.
When I went home, I just try to keep my own space. I actually went to the beach. And I know that you always encourage, go out to the mountains, go out to the beach, go out somewhere where you're really not around other people. So you want to protect that energy, because what you've just done basically is if you upgraded your own vibrational energy, because the body has an energy, it has a frequency. So you have uploaded it, and you want to hold on to that as long as you can, or recognize that energy and make it very familiar with the body, because it hasn't been a familiar energy. The energy that we have become very familiar with is people in fear and doubt and sadness and anger. And so when you're up here, and most people are up here or down here, you're like, I don't want to be around anybody. I want to go be somewhere and just hold on to this as much as I can. And you become a good attractor. And like you said, you're a magnet. You even sometimes will connect with people that are at that higher vibe. So that's the cool thing about working with different plant medicines. And particularly, I think Kambo has been kind of like the one that you feel that's been really in tune with what you needed, right? Because you have worked even with ayahuasca. And
I have, but I think too, I can't put any on like any kind of level. Yeah. It's just that specific medicine came to me because that's what I needed.
Yes.
And I think it made sense at the time, specifically because what I was experiencing had a lot to do with physiological aspects. But again, I can't really disconnect them, because even with physical ailments, you can go to ayahuasca or Huachuma or other medicines, and they can work on that level as well. So I can't really pinpoint why the universe gave me this medicine first, but I think it had a lot to do with my talking about the importance of Kambo's connection to this fearlessness.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel like that's why I call Kambo the warrior medicine.
Yeah.
And interestingly, for those of you who are not familiar with Kambo is actually used in the tribes by the hunters of the tribes before they went out on a big hunt.
Yeah.
Because that would, one, accelerate their intuition, So your sense of smell, sense of taste is enhanced. Your eyesight is enhanced.
It's like spidey senses.
Your sense of feeling. Yeah, exactly. Your intuition is enhanced. I mean, what does a hunter need? Does a hunter need to be completely enwrapped in their thoughts? They wouldn't catch anything. They have to be completely in tune with their body, because that's how you're going to detect where things are and how to move. And so I feel now, talking about it, at that time, I really needed to deepen my connection to my intuition. Because what my intuition was telling me was something was wrong, off, I should say, not wrong. Something was off in the kind of work that I was doing. And so shortly after that, I made a lot of huge changes. Not right away, but they already started to go into effect after I started working with Kambo. And perhaps like yourself, when I started working with Kambo, honestly, I was kind of hooked. I was like, okay, and the thing is, there's a part of me that says, I don't want to work with that medicine. It's freaking excruciating. And it's not like
prove it.
Yeah, and it's not like ayahuasca or psilocybin where you're like, wow, amazing, beautiful. No, you're like keeled over, exhausted, like you're explaining, having to just pass out for a couple hours. I'm like, why the heck would I want to work with that again next month?
Right.
But I just kept.
You respect it though. You respect that. So let's talk a little bit about like even like ayahuasca, because I know like I do not like when I went and experienced it for the first time. We did 4 ceremonies in a week. We went out to Peru, and my husband and I, we went together. We went to a place that, you have shamans there. There were probably about 20, I want to say about probably 20 of us. And I mean, everything is absolutely controlled where we were. I mean, the food they fed us, we weren't around other people, just the people that were there. We were here to work. We're not here to experience like, oh, let's get high type of thing, or, let's see what this does with us. It wasn't about seeing aliens or, having this psychedelic experience. So with ayahuasca, it scared me. It honestly did scare me. And when my husband was telling me about it, I was like, I don't want to go do that, because I like to be in control. And when you're working with these types of medicines, honey, you are not in control. Something takes over you, and you really, I know with working with ayahuasca, it really it pulled out a lot of the crap that was in my life, to kind of like sticking your face in shit and looking at, this is what's going on in your life right now. This is what we need to fix. You need to get, it's like, girl, get your crap together. When you go in there, and I remember our shaman said, he goes, we are not here to play with the medicine. If you go in with that attitude, you're going to get your ass handed to you. Sure enough, I know that happened to some people. I had total respect for it. I was actually scared, and they're like partaking of it, because it's like in a tea, they would give it to you. And I'm like, they would pour it, because the shaman's just sitting there and he looks at you, and I'm just like smiling, like, please be nice. Please don't give me a lot. And they're pouring it in a cup. And I'm like, my eyes are bulging out, and I'm like, stop. And I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm going, no. And he's smiling, pouring it in me. And I'm like, no. But, you drink it. And I mean, you have to go sit down and sit in your space, and you drink it, and then it just starts to work on you, and you're like in a different dimension. I kid you not. And things that you see, it's like you see visions, and you don't even know what's real anymore. So it's a real, and it lasts longer. Like the beauty of Kambo is like, it's intense, and it's just like, bam, let's just get it out of the way, and girl, just purge, like go of your crap, With ayahuasca, it's just like, if it's a beautiful journey, you want it to last. If you're on a journey that's like, oh hell, when is this going to be over, type of thing, because you're seeing things as they are. It's so different. And we also worked intensely for a week. So what kind of experience did you have with working with Aya? Because once again, you get called to work with that medicine. It's not something that, hey, I'm just going to go try this, or people that have like weekends it's served. I mean, you can get a hold of ayahuasca ceremony anywhere in the world, but it's
Mhm.
not legal here in the States. So that's why we flew out to Peru and Ecuador and Costa Rica and different countries. I mean, you can even go to Mexico and work with mushrooms and have a mushroom ceremony that takes you on a different trip. But that's another conversation. But how about when you worked? Because you've worked with the ayahuasca, and um, from what I feel is working with Aya, and then maybe even with Kambo, kind of cleaning things up, is a really good combo to do.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And now that we're talking about it, I'm starting to see some connections. When I started working with Kambo, actually, as you were saying, you're in this space where your energetic vibration is at a heightened state.
Yeah.
And so you also notice a lot more synchronicities in your life.
Yep.
You're like, well, for one, you're way more in tune. You're way more open. You actually can notice things that are happening in your
Yes.
life more,
Yes.
a lot more. So that was actually during the time I met an intuitive on my path. And that was really and he planted the seed of ayahuasca. He said, I recommend working with ayahuasca. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And
Mhm.
it had come into my space before and had been mentioned to me. But with the work with Kambo, I feel at that time, that's when I was much more attuned to messages that were coming to me. So I took that much more seriously. And then it just kept coming to me, like ayahuasca this, ayahuasca that, like from every four corners of my life. And actually, I had also done a lot of research on ayahuasca, and I wanted to be in a safe space because of all the things that you just explained,
Yes.
right? And at that time, I didn't have the space to go travel outside of the country. I didn't have that kind of time. But I knew that the calling was very strong. It was actually some time afterward, after I started working with Kambo, and I think I'd already become a practitioner by then. I'm not sure the
Mhm.
exact timeline, but I actually went to the practitioner that I was working with. His name is Simon Scott, and
Mhm.
he was the one that recommended um, a person to me, a shaman
Mhm.
here in the United States, that I could work with ayahuasca in a safe environment. So that's how I got connected with ayahuasca. And after having several conversations with that person, and basically they like qualify you. They're like, okay, I want to bring you into my space because, like you were talking about in your scenario, it's a container they're creating.
Yep.
Make
And
sure
they
that
want
whoever's coming to your space is going to be
yeah.
an energetic match to everyone else that's in their space, as well as the shaman, so you can receive.
Yeah. And it's an application process. I know where we went to in Peru, it's an application process. I mean, you have to fill out a lengthy application. Why are you coming? Are you on medications? Kind of your past
Absolutely.
history, because you don't want to be around other people. It's like, oh, I just want to try it out. It's like, honey, I'm here to do work. I'm here to
Yeah.
dig in and release the crap that's preventing me from being the best version of me, because I want to kick ass in this world and be the best person that I can be to help serve others. And what's getting in the way of that, So it's really important, I believe, to know who the shaman is, and knowing that the shaman has your best interests, like allowing, it's like, no, this person, because some of them, I mean, it can get expensive, because it is a medicine and your travel and everything, but you also want to be in that right container, so to speak, in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty intense, because you're a vulnerable person when you work with ayahuasca, because you are having an experience. I mean, when I worked with it, the following morning, because you start at 8 in the evening, the following morning, I would see some of the other participants, and they're like, the medicine's still working on me. And I'm like, what? I was intense for like 4 or 5 hours into it. And then I went to bed, and I was just wiped out, and I just slept and
Mm.
slept and slept. And I think that's why it's important that you have to be in a place that has your your best intentions, wants you to just get the maximal benefit from it. So I think that's really important. And when you were led to working with that, do you believe that that even helped you become a better practitioner of working with Kambo, or kind of you saw how they both can work together?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that my work is eventually synthesizing to be able to offer the medicines in a way that people can use them systematically in a process, where the cleansing and this strengthening your physical temple, your physical vessel has to be strong, your mind has to be clear.
Absolutely.
And so then the experience with a psychoactive medicine as powerful as ayahuasca can really do, like you say, like have its full effect. And I feel like I just want to mention this for people who have not worked with this kind of medicine, specifically ayahuasca before. The reason why there is a lengthy qualification process is very important. If you're going into a ceremonial space that doesn't do that, I would be highly suspect. And you bring up a good point that when you're working and under the effect of ayahuasca, you are extremely vulnerable. You're completely open, like you are a baby.
Yeah.
You're as vulnerable as when you were a baby. And because of that, and because of the contrast that exists in this world, there is light and there is darkness.
Yeah.
There are people that are not for that are not here to help you.
Absolutely.
They're not here to help you. And the same goes with every field, including shamanism, including medicine work. There are some nefarious people out there, and I've come across some of them.
Yeah.
And it's extremely important to know who you're working with. And I highly advise, if you can, if your intuition is like, no, this, like for you, perhaps it was that kind of experience. But for me, I was like, I need to get some referrals over here. I need to make sure that I'm going to a source that is proven and tested by other people that I trust. And so just, putting it out there for those who are considering this kind of work, it's some serious business.
Yeah. You don't mess around with this.
And there have been numerous occasions, and this is why there's also the bad rap that these kinds of medicines receive, because people go in there being extremely ignorant or naive about, everyone who's a medicine person is out for good. No. No,
and you can even look at that as a doctor, even as a practitioner. The way I practice, even with my patients, it's just like I spend hours like researching. It's not a 10, 15-minute visit or an 8-minute visit where they're like, okay, you came in, you have this pain, let's give you this drug. It's like, what's the cause behind the cause? We got to fix the cause behind the cause, not just, not even just with like, oh, you need vitamin D, or maybe you're low on B12 or iron or whatever. But what's causing all that? And most of the time it is the emotional. And that's why I'm so, I have so much respect for working with Kambo and even ayahuasca. And I've worked with peyote and mushrooms. And one thing, and I'd like to kind of get your input on this before we wrap up here, is working with the medicine. One, you're working with it, and it's not, you don't go and play with it. You're going there because you want to heal something physically in you, which is usually secondary to something that's emotional that probably happened within those first 7 years of life. That's a whole different conversation, because that's when we're creating a lot of our beliefs, even like, oh, if you have a headache, it's take an aspirin because you saw somebody else doing that. So that's a belief that's already subconsciously in you. So when you work with the plant medicines, I mean, you're going to be digging in, clearing up. Some of that crap is going to come out, but you want to be able to get it out and release it. Let that negative vibrational energy go. You can go to a therapist, psychiatrist. You can work with them for years and talk about the shit about it. Well, how did this happen? And da-da-da-da-da. And for some, fine. For me, that doesn't work. It's like, what's done is done. I can't change the past. All I can do is appreciate what I have now and make it a better future. That's how I roll. I don't need to go back and look at, continue to talk about the same story. But one of the things that I have found that has been a challenge, because I've had a lot of people that I've connected with from doing the medicine, that I still keep in touch with when we went to Peru, this is the common thing that I hear. And it is integrating back into the real world as we see it. Because you're taken at such a different space, your perspective of life changes. You go back and you totally see things so different. And it's almost like you can't connect with people. You know, with some of your same circle of friends, you can't connect with them anymore after having it. It's almost like having a Jesus experience, you know? And it's just like, holy shit, I saw the light, or having a near-death experience. You cannot go back. Why would you want to go back to that? And I think that's really hard for a lot of people is integration.
Absolutely.
So I'd like for you to share, you know, what are some good ways of integrating back? I finally figured it out, and I was having a conversation with someone else, and I finally figured out the missing piece, which I'll share later, but I want you to kind of share real quick on that.
I think that has a lot to do with what I had mentioned early on in this conversation, which is that the way that I'm approaching work with my clients is very different now. In that, instead of just waiting for the integration after the ceremony, what I'm doing now is I'm preparing them with the background information. So what I'm noticing is people have some holes in their understanding of energy and how the universe works. So what I provide now is a comprehensive re-education of what the world is, what the background reality is. So when they go into a space with ayahuasca, for instance, they're not completely, well, I mean, you will be dazzled and mesmerized. That's like, of course, but you have a way of understanding what it is that you are experiencing. And this also has to do with why certain people are not qualified to work with ayahuasca, specifically if they have a tendency towards psychosis, for instance. And because I feel like to get the most out of your experience, because it can be a once in a lifetime thing for some people. Some people, it can be, you know, once a year, whatever, however you decide to work with it and however it finds you. But if it is a one-time thing, or if you're using it throughout your life, you're leveling up like deeply. And it's a transformative experience. But that can be even more enhanced if you know what the hell is going on. Specifically, if you know about yourself and how you're connected to the universe, how your subconscious mind works. And so in terms of preparing someone for this kind of momentous experience, because the thing is, it's not just ayahuasca, it's everything leading up to that. And it's everything after that as well. It's preparing someone to understand why it is that you're being shown these things. And also it continues into the integration bit after the medicine work, when you know what to do with your life after this. So when you see, for instance, as you mentioned, you go into your old circle of friends and you're not feeling this connection that you used to, because you yourself have changed. Your energetic vibration has changed. You're no longer a match to specific activities, people, you know, places. And so understanding like how to navigate your life after that, I think you're absolutely right. Integration is a huge piece. And I think a big part of our experiences with ayahuasca is reconnecting to the universe. And reconnecting to your own source, your own like beingness as love itself. And I think it's so interesting because we have an understanding conceptually of what love is. And we're talking about the subconscious mind. In the first 7 to 8 years of life, we're picking up all these things and these ideas and programs. Specifically, we learn about like what we think is love. You know, our parents, our families, our societies tell us what love is and how we're supposed to act in order to be loving, for instance. And then we go into a ceremony with ayahuasca and it's like, boom, that's not love, my friend. That's not love. That's programming. You know, things like this. And then you realize that you have this inner experience of what love feels like. And you want to take that and make it happen in your life. And that's a whole entire journey. It's not just this one night or maybe 4 nights or a week of working with ayahuasca. It's like, okay, now your life, it's like you were going in one direction and it just changed, you know? But then there's that whole path now that you're creating. And so what I'm offering now is the ability to like really take the steps that you need to create the life you want from that trajectory that you just created. I just decided I want a different life. Bam. Okay, here's how to do it. And I'm giving people the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been the missing link.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I share in, when people reach out to me and they're like, I'm just really having a crappy day. It's just like, I don't even want to be here anymore. And I'm like, I know exactly how it feels. I felt like that too. I said, and there's some days that I feel like that as well. I don't always have perfect, it's an ebbs and flows. It's just like the ocean, there's waves and there's not, there's high tide and there's low tide.
Mm-hmm.
So really what it comes down to is really understanding that honestly, everything is a vibrational frequency. Everything is energy. Energy and the frequency are messages that are being carried across the world. And that's very so simplistic, because if I'm thinking about someone, I'm like, oh, my mom does this to me all the time. She knows I'm busy. She goes, I hate calling you. I'm like, just call me. I don't want to interrupt your day. So she won't call. She won't pick up the phone. She just, tell me, she'll just say it. Linda, I need you to call me, and I call her and she answers and she just says my name. She just like knows it's me. She was like, oh, hi, honey, I've been waiting for your call. I'm like, how did you know that was me? But we knew because it's that frequency. So even after working with the medicine, you become so heightened that's why it's so important to understand everything has a frequency, and people that like are Christians or believers, because I grew up in that faith and that's a different conversation. But sometimes people say, you're not supposed to go do that stuff. You're not supposed to be working with shamans. To me, it's about you're flowing in the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
To me, it's like if I was made in the image of God, without getting too preachy. I was made in the image of God. So in essence, if I was made in the image, and the Bible even tells us that you're going to do greater things than I did. That's pretty freaking powerful. If we're going to be able to do greater things than he did, the only way we're going to do it is to being tapped into his energy, which is love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people really like, bam, get that and go back to that and just thinking, I am a human. I am having a human experience. I'm a soul having a human experience, but the Holy Spirit, God lives within me. So I need to like dig into that. And that's why meditation and prayer, I have found, has worked really well back into integration, understanding everything that you were talking about, energy and kind of the physics about it, and getting in a little deep with that. But to be able to focus on that as well, and just be more mindful. I know that sounds kind of so cliche, but it is. Being mindful is just being being aware, and meditation is just knowing who you are.
Yeah,
I think it kind of just wraps that up in that. So share with me what's going on you've got some projects coming on. I know you've got a course and you're working with clients. You recently relocated, but you're doing a lot of work now in preparation of probably some big things coming up in the year. So can you kind of share what's going on, how people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has a lot to do with what you were saying about just kind of following the flow and really tapping in.
Yeah.
Because when we're in resistance to what's happening, then we're not in that kind of flow at all. Because it's basically an example of you are not trusting what the universe is providing.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I feel like even though COVID-19 is a lot of people can look at it as an inconvenience, and so many things have happened. I'm not saying that people are not suffering during this time. A lot of people have lost their jobs or undergoing a lot of different challenges. I just moved to Portland, and I had just started teaching at a yoga studio for 3 months, and then bam, COVID hit, right?
Yeah.
I lost my job. I was the new guy, so of course I'm not going to be taken on after that. So that actually led me to really rethinking what it is that I'm doing here, and what services that I'm providing, and what I'm offering to the world, and what I'm offering to people. And it really just kind of started happening on its own, where I realized that I don't really want to take people through physical yoga practices. I think it's very helpful, but I want to help people completely transform their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has a lot to do with what's happening on this planet. The fact that you're helping people in this kind of way, and I'm helping people in this kind of way. I want to help people. Like, I want more people like us.
Yes.
Not to like create them, but people who want this.
Mm-hmm.
People who are called to this, who
Yes,
are
absolutely.
called to helping other people awaken,
Yeah.
because they are on the verge of their own awakening process, or they're in the midst of it.
Yeah.
That is what I'm here to help people with.
Okay.
Because I'm sure you feel this way. It's like, why do I have all this information? Why was my life journey this way? And how did it play out this way, so that I'm in this position now where I have complete like openness, like I can choose where I can go from now, because I don't have any obligations to any job. So instead of looking at it like, shit, I just lost my job. I wanted to do this, A, B, and C, but now I can't do it. I just don't think that way. And it's probably because we work with medicine. So it's a totally different way of thinking.
You look at things differently.
Yeah.
So that's what you want to teach people. That's what you want to do, is that's what part of your work is now, is especially because of your experience, even people that have been working, and we all have had some sort of addiction, but I think people can relate more with you, of those who've had like chemical addictions. But even working with people that haven't had chemical addictions, even people that are just perfectionisms or throw themselves in work. So you have a program that you can work with people and taking them into pretty much creating their life, what they want.
Absolutely. Now, although we are talking about medicine work with specific plant medicines, the thing is, transformation doesn't require medicine of that kind. I think it requires medicine, but medicine doesn't come in that kind of package. It's like the medicine woman, you and I, like we are the medicine. You are the medicine.
Yeah.
And the universe gives us these specific plant medicines or earth medicines to work with, to enhance whatever we're already doing. It's really important to not become over reliant on these physical things.
Yes.
Although they create a lot of transformational potential. It's like you have to have the entire life set up. Like you can't change your subconscious mind by one ceremony, even like a ceremony every weekend for the next 3 years. You have to have an approach, a systematic process to reprogram, change your subconscious mind. That's the key.
100%.
What's that?
That's 100%. You're so spot on with that.
Yeah. It's like the key is your subconscious mind, but how also along with that, so people can understand a little bit more about that, the subconscious mind is like how we think of the world, and how that's playing out through our behaviors and the way that we think. And so what I offer is an understanding of the background reality. You got to know the laws of the universe and how to work them and how to use them to your benefit. Because a lot of the things that are out there, we get snippets on social media, and let's say you've watched The Secret. I'm like, oh, I know how the law of attraction works. Okay, you're like here, you're at the beginning. You have to learn the nuances. It's just like learning anything. Like, okay, I'm going to learn martial arts. You can't learn it over a weekend. You have to create a process and a program that allows it to become second nature to who you are. And it's challenging. Perhaps you've encountered this as well. It's challenging in a society where we're so programmed to covet instant gratification. We're constantly looking for instant gratification. And the thing is, that which you value most, which is happiness in your life, let's say, you have to work for it. If you value something, and if you find that that is a worthy cause for your life, let's say you're looking for your purpose in life, you're wanting to create meaning. If it's something that huge, that monumental, you're gonna want to work for it, because it's gonna be worth it.
Absolutely. So that's
And
where you can guide people along in that journey. How's the best
absolutely.
way to get a hold of you? Is it on your website?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me through my website, which is
Okay.
jane@janeokagaya.com. You
Okay.
can also, I have a Facebook group that is specifically geared toward people who are struggling with addictive behaviors or people who are over their addictive behaviors but need guidance afterward. I think it's a great way to connect and get to know each other and get to know me and my work. It
Absolutely.
just kind of started, and like I said, it wasn't really until COVID that I started creating this very different approach, but it's really just bringing everything that I've done all together. But yeah, those are the best ways to connect with me. You can send me an email directly or go to my website, which is the same, my full name, janeokagayashin.com. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure people are going to get so much value out of this, and those who want to work with plant medicines or even beyond that. And I really believe that we all need to have a guide or a mentor in our lives to take us to the next level. And those guide and mentors are always changing because you
Yeah,
change as an
absolutely.
individual. So those who feel that they can resonate with your type of work, hope they can reach out to you, go onto your website, check you out, and get connected with you. And thank you so much for sharing so much information. And don't be afraid of plant medicines. It's just have an intention, and you have to do the work. And it
Mm,
always comes out different than what you expect. That's all I have to say. It's
absolutely.
always different than what you expect when you go in. And we can't even tell you ahead of time, you're going to feel this way, you're going to feel this way. It's just like, it's a journey, just like life. You can eat a specific eating plan that worked for you like 5 years ago, and you do it now and it doesn't work for you because you're a
Mm,
different person. So that's how the medicines work, and that's why we are a continuous work in progress, and that's why
mm.
this podcast is all about helping people become the best version of them by transforming their mind, their body, and spirit. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing all the wisdom that you have. So, all right, all, we will see you next week, and have a great day, and we will see you. Goodbye from Wellness Wednesday Inspirations. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.